The Consumer Bankers Association is pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Accelerate the Home Equity Loan Process, presented by Accurate Group. My name is Isabella, and it is my pleasure to facilitate today's event. Thank you for joining. Please note we are recording and all participant lines are muted. If you have any trouble, please email conferences@consumerbankers.com or send a message in the Q&A box. The presentation will last up to 60 minutes and will include question and answer opportunities at the end. You may submit a question at any time by entering the questions into the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen. As a reminder, the views expressed in this webinar are those of the presenters and do not represent the views of CPA or its members. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers, Josh Dorowski, Manager Notary Work Signing Solutions at Accurate Group, and Frank Guanera, Director of National Sales at Accurate Group. Josh and Frank, welcome.
Thanks, Isabella.
Thank you, Isabella.
So I appreciate everybody taking a few minutes out of your Friday to attend. I'd also like to thank those of you who are customers of the Accurate Group. We really appreciate the business and partnership over the years. Josh and I are going to share some trends that have evolved in the past year or so, and how lenders are kind of leveraging the various products and services to improve the customer experience and accelerate turn times. Before we dive into that, I wanted to start with just two quick poll questions. The first one, is your organization currently using a form of one of the following solutions, either remote online notarization, known as RON, the in-person electronic notarization, or the IPEN, or a hybrid e-signing? I'll give everybody a minute to kind of lock in your responses.
Yeah, but Frank, just to touch on number 3 there for everybody, that could be any form of, sending your non-notarized docs beforehand to collect an e-signature and then finishing up your mortgage and note with a notary in person. So we just wanted to see what kind of an all-encompassing e-solution you may provide today.
Thanks for that clarification, Josh.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we've got 20. Geez, it's pretty well represented. Yeah, 25% are using RON, 25% using the IPEN, and 50% using a hybrid signing solution. Appreciate the participation. One more question, we'll dive into it. So the next question, is your organization currently using traditional appraisals for home equity loans? So when I say traditional, I'm looking at, your 1004s, your 2055s, and just using those only. Okay, so we've got 40% just using traditional appraisals, and then 60% using some other form of appraisal or valuation. All right, that's helpful. I appreciate that. So, as we probably all have experienced, the competition for new loans today is really, really tough. One obvious reason, I think, is just the unprecedented increase in rates, which has resulted kind of in fewer borrowers, right? Then you kind of couple that with housing inventory reaching all-time lows. And most recently, as we saw, I think it was last week, there was an 8% decline in housing starts. consumers are really demanding faster cycle times and a more digital experience. And lenders like SoFi and Rocket have aggressively entered the unsecured market. And what that kind of tells us is that borrowers are willing to pay more to have quicker access for the money that they need. I wanted to share a couple of responses to a survey that we conducted. So earlier this year, we commissioned a survey, and the idea with the survey was we wanted to ask homeowners, with the rising rates, what's their view on borrowing, right? Whether it's home equity, refinance, reverse mortgage. And of the participants in the survey that answered that they were likely or highly likely to take out a home equity loan or line of credit, refinance their existing mortgage, or take out a reverse mortgage, we then asked the follow-up question, when were you likely to do that? And as you can see from this slide, 50% of the respondents for home equity and refi, and over 60% of those really seeking a reverse mortgage indicated that they were most likely to apply for that loan in the second half of the year. And given the fact that the rates were rising at the time, that was actually a pretty encouraging response from us. In fact, we were kind of thinking quite the opposite, that that the borrowing was going to really kind of come to a screeching halt. And obviously it kind of did in refinance, but it seems like home equity stayed pretty strong over at least the first half of the year. Seems like it's slowing a little bit, but it was pretty encouraging by that survey. And what I wanted to do before we kind of dig into some of Josh's slides is go over a couple of trends that we've seen that are emerging in the last 2 years. The first trend was that our home equity clients historically are using valuation cascades, but historically that valuation cascade really looked like a desktop appraisal or hybrid appraisal, followed by a traditional appraisal. Many of our new and existing clients have really expanded the valuation box, if you will, by inserting an AVM and PCR as the first product in that valuation cascade. And typically when we talk to our customers or prospective customers, our best practice recommendation when using AVMs is to deploy a pre-built validated AVM cascade combined with a PCR to meet the interagency guidelines. And this type of AVM solution is going to test 10 plus of the AVMs that are available in the market. And it's going to provide a 3 AVM cascade at the county level. The 3 AVMs are really going to be the best performing AVMs in that county based on the blind testing. If the AVM doesn't hit, the next product in that valuation cascade would be a desktop appraisal or hybrid appraisal. And typically that'll be an exterior. And then it'll be followed up by really kind of a traditional appraisal, right? So any product or any property type that isn't a good candidate for a desktop appraisal, maybe it's on large acreage, has some complexity, stuff like that would most likely move to a traditional appraisal. And the benefit that our lenders are getting from this type of approach is that it reduces your overall valuation spend because you're using the least expensive compliant valuation product based on the credit risk of the borrower. So if you think of, a consumer that might be taking out a, $25,000 home equity line of credit, and they've got, 50% LTV, they've got great credit scores. It's almost overkill to use a 1004 or 2055. So what they're doing is they're looking at that credit box and looking at the credit risk of the borrower and using the appropriate valuation product to reduce the cost. It also reduces cycle times because in that type of cascade, you're going to auto upgrade. So your provider is going to auto upgrade. If the AVM doesn't hit, auto upgrade to the next valuation product. There's no back and forth. Do we want to upgrade? Should we upgrade? It just automatically happens. And then, as I said, if it's not a good candidate for a desktop, it would just upgrade to that traditional appraisal. Most importantly, it improves the consumer experience. The second trend that we've seen really probably in this year is lenders are upgrading their appraisal management platforms and their title management platforms. Prior to this year, lenders were so busy, they couldn't even consider to upgrade their platform, right? It's like trying to change the tire while you're driving down the freeway. Now that volumes have slowed, our Appraisal Works platform has seen a surge in new clients wanting to upgrade from their outdated kind of legacy systems. And the benefit there is when you upgrade into a more modern platform, it typically is a platform that can be customized and configured easily to meet kind of unique workflows. And you're able to do that, or you should be able to do that without development projects. That ultimately leads to increased efficiencies, reduced overhead, and then again, it improves the overall consumer experience. In addition, these platforms have on-demand reporting. If you're using some of the legacy platforms, reporting, we do get this complaint a lot when we talk to customers, is that the reporting is too rigid, right? I can't create my own reports, or if I need a report, it takes months to get a new report. In a new platform like Appraisal Works, you should be able to create on-demand reports. We've got an integration with Microsoft's Power BI, and what that helps our customers do is create these on-demand reports, customize those reports, and then create and get actionable data where they can start to improve the process, right? Whether it's order assignment, order management, QC, where you can take, QC and really take it to the next level if you need to do that. Or if you've got maybe a low risk type thing where you can do an accelerated review on it. So that is another trend that we're seeing. And the third and final trend that we're seeing is a much greater adoption of remote online notarization, IPEN, or hybrid e-signing. And I don't want to take Josh's thunder here, so I'm kind of going to turn it over to Josh and let Josh kind of take over from here. Josh, let me know when you want me to move slides, because it'll be easier for me to run it.
Absolutely, Frank. So thank you again, everybody, for attending today as well. And I do want to remind everybody, if you do have questions along the way, to submit them and we will answer as we go here. But yeah, as Frank was mentioning here, I think a big benefit of the closing cycle is the ability of Ron and any e-closing solutions to help assist your customers and really what they're looking for in a closing experience. And my first slide here is really some of the benefits of digitalizing the closing experience. It reduces your overall cycle time, whereas you're not mailing paper documents back and forth. It's more of a streamlined process, whereas, if you do a closing, let's say right now at 2:00, you could have those notarized documents available to you in an hour. They could be right back to you. You have them, you can see that they're signed. And if you're doing same day funding, you can do that. So that's a huge benefit of the e-closing experience. Like I mentioned, you do streamline it, so you don't have to worry about UPS or FedEx losing your package or going back and forth, waiting for it to get there. Especially with some of the UPS things going on right now, it'd be a benefit to have a RON option available. And it improves your quality of data and eliminates errors. That's also a huge key with a RON transaction where, some of the technology out there won't allow you to finish. And I'll get more into that as I kind of demonstrate one of our technology vendors that we have and show you almost exactly what it'll tell you when you're in the middle of a closing. So that's a huge benefit as well. And of course, it delivers an exceptional customer experience by enabling the borrowers to easily access their loan documents. So they'll be able to download them before the signing and view them if they would like to. And then after the signing, they'll have a copy available to them. So they don't have to, have it scanned at the closing or ask you for it afterwards. They'll have the ability to download the documents they signed afterwards and have a copy. So really, those are some of the main benefits of, digitalizing the closing experience from a whole. And I do want to touch on some of our RON trends, but also discuss the hybrid process and an IPEN. So really the three types of e-closings that are becoming more normalized in the industry right now and what we're seeing here at Accurate. And there's three different closing types. So you have your traditional RON with an e-note. It's all done electronically. Everything's signed with the notary in session. Even documents that aren't requiring notarization, but we still do the entire package on there. One thing I did want to note with our trends from 2021 and on is we continually see a gradual increase up to this year. And really this year, it's even taken off. We're projected to just be under 3,000. I wouldn't be shocked if we do breach that number as we continue to grow and increase. That's based on our projections through June. But even some information I didn't include on here is in 2019, we only had 358 RON signings. And what we saw with COVID in 2020 really did change the industry in a way that it did kind of expedite this e-close process with states doing emergency orders to allow it. It was kind of wild west for a time. It still is, even with legislation, because there's some states that have specific statutes. But anyway, it definitely increased the demand for that and expedited that process. So really, we've seen it grow even outside of COVID with those emergency orders ending. We see that states really picked it up, and we'll get into that on the next slide as well. Actually, Frank, you can go back one more still. So I did want to touch on these other types of e-closings as well. So we also have a process with a couple of clients with a quote unquote hybrid RON process. So in this manner, they don't want an e-note and they want that wet signed. So we will do the whole RON transaction minus the note with a notary and paper mail the note to the borrower to sign during the signing session. Now, this is videotaped and secured, which I will also detail later. But this allows you, if you do not want to go down the route of e-notes yet, to still collect a wet signature on your note and then have that on camera as well. So it's still secure. They've been identified with the notary and the RON. So that's one solution. If you're not totally ready to jump to the e-note yet, this process will allow you to still integrate the RON process with us mailing the paper note to your signer. And then the last one that we really see with an electronic notarization would be the IPEN. A lot of our clients right now are looking into this process. It's more widely accepted than a RON. It's still not across the board yet. There's still a couple of states holding out. But this process would still detail the mobile notary going to the borrower in person and physically being with them across the table. They would utilize a platform to e-notarize while the borrowers are e-signing with them in person. And that process, while it does take away some of the benefits of a RON, because that allows the signer to be anywhere, you still have to physically meet with a notary. So we see that trend though starting to pick up just as we move totally towards digitization.
Hey, Josh, before we move on, are there other uses for this other than just like maybe home equity loans that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. We utilize this for correction signing, for power of attorneys. So we have a lot of different utilization for this right now with our clients. So we even have lenders that'll utilize tax forms for this to have it notarized with a notary electronically. So we have a lot of wide basis for this. One thing I do want to touch on while you are bringing that up is we had a client of ours that had a borrower on a yacht, and they needed to close on a home, but needed a power of attorney on it. So we were able on the same day to get them to notarize the power of attorney and get it to the table for them so they could sign on behalf of their borrower. So that's just one benefit of the RON transaction, is that the notary is meeting with the borrower still in a secured fashion in a room. They've been identified through two methods, and they are able to complete that wherever. So it's a huge benefit when you have a rush situation like that. It is a great tool to have in your pocket, so to speak.
Yeah, I've actually seen that really in the high net worths groups of certain lenders, because those folks are they're traveling, they're overseas, they're wherever, right? Maybe the husband and wife aren't together, and it certainly makes the experience much better, almost kind of what they're expecting.
Yep, absolutely. It delays any time if they're going on vacation, or like you said, they're overseas. They don't have to wait to take out that home equity line of credit. They can just get that done today still. So that's a huge benefit of the RON for sure.
I appreciate answering that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So what we have pulled up here is kind of the state of the RON legislation right now. So as of today, it's legal in most states. I want to say off the top of my head, 43 here. There are some states that are pending right now. As most of you probably know at this point, North Carolina did push it, so we're still waiting on them. But this map kind of details the remote online notarization with the stars, and then the green and red is for IPEN, so in-person electronic notarization. So as you can see, it's super widely accepted at this point, to put it very mildly. If I were to show you this map in 2019, there would be a lot of red on it and no stars. So it has come a long way in just a couple of years. And in both those notarization types, the signature and the notary seal are applied electronically in both those signing types. So again, the e-closing and RON benefits, as I kind of detailed before, you have a faster delivery of the documents to the borrower. They can have a copy of their documents same day, same with you. There's an automated capture of the borrower's review and signatures and an online audit trail. What that will allow you to do is to see exactly where they are with a PIN number back, and also when they signed with the notary, how the notary actually identified them. It'll tell you that their ID's passed. So that audit trail is a very nice tool and something you wouldn't have at a normal mobile signing. Like I mentioned before, you have a secured e-signature of the closing documents. We put most in there because if you're using a hybrid wet signing, it's not e-signed, so it's not on that portal. Electronic notarization or mobile notaries for better borrower experience. So you have that option if a borrower still wants to go into your bank branch, or they do want to sign at home, you have that option of doing that. So you have, if they don't want to do that and want to be on vacation and still complete their transaction, you can do that with the RON option available. And then you have a better compliance with the record of the signed documents stored electronically. So you'll have that in-house, in hand, same day. You'll be able to store that and see that moving forward. So as I move on here, I am going to do a little quick demo and overview of our RON technology partner and how exactly we work with them and our current clients to digitize their closing experience. So from a high level point on the accurate side, there isn't really too much we require of our lenders to change in this process. So we currently get the documents from our client, we upload them to our technology partner, the notary will take care of e-tagging the documents, and then they will go to closing. So really from this aspect, I know a lot of lenders are hesitant to jump and digitize the closing experience, but from a transactional aspect, it really isn't too much of a difference. really it's on your end with the acceptance of the e-notes, and then being able to, approve a RON transaction for your company is really what we find out is really the breaking point to break through that barrier. So today I'm going to show off what a notary cam is kind of looks like from the closing experience. They are a technology partner that we at Accurate Group here have our trained notaries on and complete closings through. So right here, what you see on the right-hand side is our actual sign-in page, what your borrower would receive when they get a welcome email from the notary. So the notary would send them the meeting link for RON if they were to close. At that point, they would need to log in. There will be a two-factor identification for them to log in and get access to the documents. Now, as I do want to detail again on this last point too. So our notaries are NNA trained and qualified, and we also have a panel that's been doing these for goodness, now 4 years, and they've done thousands of these at this point. So we have a very high trained pool. There's nothing they haven't seen during a RON process and can really help walk a borrower through it. Any issues they may be having signing in, any issues they may have signing the documents. We see a wide range of things with these, and our notaries do a great job of helping a borrower through that.
So Josh, I got a question. Maybe if you're going to answer this later, then just let me know. But so one of the things that I've heard from lenders in the reason they don't want to move to this type of process is because they use that signing in the branch kind of as cross-sell. And how are the loan staff able to attend these? Like how can they overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Frank. A lot of our lenders do choose to do that, especially when they're closing in person. One benefit of a RON transaction is that there is not a limit to who can be invited to the signing room. So if you do want a lender to be invited and be there for a cross-selling opportunity, or to just plainly be present for the signing, we have the ability to do that. Our notary can certainly invite a contact from the lender to the signing, and then they can sit in on the transaction and be there for it.
Have you noticed, like with the process, that maybe some lenders are moving that cross-sell up in the process, or are some lenders actually doing that cross-sell at the end of the signing?
Yeah, I'd see from our standpoint, what we normally see, it is happening a lot earlier in the process now. I'd say at the time of application, they may be trying to cross-sell before they get to the closing table. And even in some aspects, they're offering some sort of discount in the closing if they, cross-sell them on something at application time. So from my standpoint, we do kind of see that beforehand and are including those documents also to be completed at the closing. So if they do, sell them something, we're getting that done for them too.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, so this is what your borrower would see on the first screen after they log in here. So they would be in the signing session with the notary. And this is what I was detailing before about the security of a RON transaction. So the borrower would need to submit two things to the notary to be verified. The first would be their driver's license, which you'll see first here on the main screen. They can take a photo of it, they can upload a file, or they can do it through their phone. So they have 3 different options for their convenience to upload a photo to the notary and the notary cam system. Once they do that, the notary cam system will run their ID through a credential analysis that will tell the notary if it's a fake ID or if it is verified. Believe me, it does happen that, and this is a big catcher of fraud and a great, tool for us to be able to avoid fraud, especially right now in the industry. There's a lot of fraud going on. So this is a great tool to be able to stop that and not even get to the table. Once it's verified and back to the notary will be able to push the second part of the security of the transaction, which is the KBA, which is knowledge-based authentication. And that's what you see on the right side of the screen there. It is blurred out for safety there in this demo, but the borrower would need to fill out their name, date of birth, social security number, and submit that to the system. They will run a knowledge-based questionnaire that is pulled from their credit history That is one drawback of Ron. So if you are looking to digitize in this space and maybe you have borrowers from overseas, it may be a bit of an issue. So as of right now, we're still looking to evolve and to make sure we can assist borrowers in that direction. But for right now, unfortunately, there's not a solution if someone has a credit history from overseas, Canada, to be an example of. But what will happen is the borrower will have 5 questions submitted to them, and they must answer 4 to 5 in 2 minutes to be able to be verified for this. So this is the last piece. Now, if they fail it, they will have the opportunity to take it a second time. If they do fail the second time, then we will need to wait 24 hours to have them re-sign. A lot of the questions can be hard to answer. What our notaries will advise people beforehand is obviously they can't help them with the questions, but they will let them know, just do your best that you can, so that they can, just just do the best you can. Sometimes you can't remember exactly what house you lived at in 1990. I know for me, I lived at 4 different houses when I was in college. So to me, to remember my address in 2012 can be a bit difficult, but I'll just try to pick the best answer and pass the test. Once they are approved and they pass the KBA, the notary will get the all clear to proceed, and then they can begin the signing session. Once they begin the signing session, they will be asked to consent to e-sign the transaction. Of course, they will select yes on that. And then at that point, they will begin to record the transaction. Now, the notary must store this X amount of years, depending on their state. So they will have that video recording available. We can also provide that to you if you need it transaction to transaction, or if there's some security feature. I will say a lot of our clients today do not require that video, but it is always there in case you do need it. And then also the audit trail as well is stored with the notary. Once they click yes on the consent to e-signing, they then will be able to sign moving forward. Frank, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide there. So as I mentioned, each session is recorded. This is exactly what the borrower would see. Up top, you see they'd have the conversation with the notary directly on the webcam. If for some reason they're having issues on the webcam and the notary can't see them, can't hear them, they cannot continue with the transaction. The borrower must have a clear connection. So they need to be able to hear and see them. They just can't click through, join in voice, and be, can't see them on it. So they will stop the session at that point. Frank, if you want to go ahead on the next one as well. All right, perfect. So I did detail this earlier too. So you can see on this screen, the borrower had clicked to sign. They haven't clicked to put the date in yet. But if you see up top there, it can be a little small, but it says previous or next tag and 13 remaining tags. So one benefit of a RON is that there's less issues with, missing a signature, missing a date, anything of that nature. What is a huge benefit of digitizing a closing experience is that signatures are not missed. The borrower doesn't misspell their name, anything of that nature. Up top there's 13 remaining tags. So this borrower needs to sign and date in 13 more areas. If they do not, and the notary tries to close out the session early, it will not allow them to. So this is a huge benefit, not just for time, but also cost, because it costs money for you to mail documents back and forth. So you as a lender will be able to save a huge amount of money on corrections here, having your post-closing team deal with that issue. For the borrower's sake, they don't have to worry about going back, getting something re-signed, getting something re-notarized. So that is a huge benefit of a RON transaction, and I definitely wanted to detail that on this page. And then lastly, I did want to note here that we did include a linked video to an actual demo from NotaryCam for your convenience. So it is embedded in this PowerPoint that we can share afterwards upon request. So you can see a quick little video about how the whole closing process would go with a borrower.
I appreciate it, Josh. So kind of like in summary, what we've experienced with our lenders is they're really taking 2 paths to reduce cycle time and improve the consumer's experience, but also reduce their own overhead. So the first path is taking the valuation process and really looking at the valuation process. Are we using a valuation cascade effectively and efficiently, and using the least expensive, most compliant product based on the credit profile of your borrower? As we said earlier, right? We don't need 2055 or a 1004 on a low risk, low loan amount home equity loan or line of credit. So our lenders are taking that valuation process and expanding the box, right? And with pre-validated AVM cascades available to lenders in the market, it allows lenders to use that AVM without having to stand up an entire department to do testing of the AVM. These pre-validated AVM cascades have all the testing and regulatory reporting needed to be able to deploy and use an AVM plus a property condition report. And the property condition report is a really important component. If you look at the interagency guidelines state that you need to know the actual physical condition of the subject property. Well, if you just run an AVM and you don't have that property condition report married to that AVM, you're missing that component of the guidelines. You don't know what the actual physical condition is. In fact, you don't even know that the properties even exists. So that's an important component. So we're seeing our lender partners take apart their current valuation process and really look at it and say, how do we improve the process? How do we expand the box and create the right valuation cascade based on the profile of our borrower? The next area is, as Josh just explained, utilizing e-signing, Ron, some type of either iPen or hybrid solution so that we can effectively get a signing done. We're not missing signatures. It creates a better experience for the consumer. I've used it in the past and I've had a really good experience with it, right? Because I don't want to go into the branch. I just want to do it from wherever I'm at. So being able to do that is actually providing that experience. So you're streamlining it, reducing kind of the cost. If you think about it, even in that respect of not missing a signature, you're reducing the UPS or FedEx expense. You're pulling that out of the mix. And then finally, where we're seeing lenders create a lot of efficiency is they're looking at their platforms, right? How are we placing orders, right? Is our LOS connected to a platform where we can manage either appraisers or AMCs or a combination of both? Does your platform have the ability to manage title as well? So they're leveraging or upgrading that platform so that you can then run reports, look at your own operation, look at your vendors and make sure that your vendors are performing, make sure that your own operational teams are performing efficiently, and then finding out where there are gaps, what you need to do to close those gaps, and how to create the efficiency to kind of reduce, to further reduce your overhead. And having a good platform, I can't overstate that enough. That is one of the areas where we've seen a lot of our customers create huge efficiency, is just getting on a platform where they can run ad hoc, on-demand reports and really look at the performance of their vendors and look at the performance of their own teams to find out where they can create efficiencies. So, those are really the three places that we've seen our lender partners kind of take apart the process and rebuild it. And this is almost the perfect time to do it. because we know that rates at some point they're going to come down, and we need to be prepared for it. And if you're going to swap out a platform, you can't do that when you're extremely busy. So that'll kind of open up the floor. If there's any questions, we're happy to take any questions that the group might have. Josh, can you take a look at and see if there's any questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. I got one here. Do you offer any API for your services?
Yes, we have. So when we're talking about, bring that to the Appraisal Works platform, it's an open API. So that API, obviously, you can write to that API. If you're, using an LOS, a lot of those LOSs are already interfaced with that platform. Depending on the platform, the interface may already be built. So yes, there's an open API. And if somebody wanted to take a look at that, we can share the open API. We can do a demo. It's also a way for some of our lenders that are ordering our products that want to use that as the gateway to get to our products. So that's also an option as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. I do have another one here. This is an interesting question. Can you speak to any current or past cases of successful court challenges brought by borrowers for a RON signing? Now, I can say from my end, that's not something I'm privy to, but I didn't know if you had seen anything on that, Frank, or have any information on that.
I have not. I can go back and ask our chief operating officer if he's seen any court cases, and if he has, I'd be happy to share it with the group. Josh, if you just tag that one so that we know who that is, if we got something, we can certainly share it.
Awesome, absolutely. I have another question here. Realizing that RON is live in most states, do we find that there's still issues with recording in counties that are rural and not quite built out for electronic document recording? Now, I can certainly speak to that one. We've had quite a lot of experience with that. So what we find out is there are states that do approve RON, but there are some counties like this anonymous attendee put that will not accept a RON recording. So what we will do and how accurate, I'm not sure if other companies that utilize RON do this, we will call the county to confirm before we approve the transaction to make sure that they will, one, take an e-notarized document and to record it. For us, we won't allow it to get to closing unless the recording office didn't tell us the truth, which does happen from time to time. Especially during the emergency order phase, we were calling counties to make sure they were recording, even if the governor said, hey, you need to take this. So from our aspect, when you order a RON with us, we'll call the county if we haven't already to confirm that they will take a recording. If not, we will let you know, hey, this needs to be a traditional mobile wet signing, and let you know of that. So from our aspect, that's how we kind of handle that question. I do have another one here, Frank. Does Appraisal Works only cover valuation products or your e-closing products as well?
So today it covers our valuation products. We are incorporating the e-closing and title. That is expected to be released into production in Q4 of this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. I do have one more question here. It says, Federal Home Loan Bank currently requires wet signatures for the note and mortgage, which limits our e-close options. Do you have any solutions for that, or have you heard any potential changes surrounding that requirement? I can say on our end, there are a couple that do accept it, but for us, like I mentioned, with the hybrid RON we do for some of our clients, we will mail the note wet to the borrower and have them complete it during the RON. That's certainly something we could do for a mortgage too. If you wanted to have your borrower sign a RON with a notary, the mortgage, we would still probably need to have a notary wet sign that off the top of my head. Now I'm thinking that, but for the note, that's how we solve that issue. The mortgage, that would be more of an IPEN hybrid solution where you could have the borrower e-sign the non-notarized documents beforehand, and then just the mobile notary would come by and notarize the mortgage. So there's a lot of different solutions to, I guess, that kind of question, because there's a lot of options now with in-person electronic notarization, RON, and so forth. Let me see if there's any more down here. I got one more for you, Frank. Does Appraisal Works homogenize different vendor reports? And can you explain a little more about the QC function?
Could you repeat the first part of that, Josh? I didn't get the first part of that.
Yeah, does Appraisal Works homogenize different vendor reports? I'm probably saying that wrong, but I guess, does it realize different vendor report, or can you detail different vendor reports and, I guess, customize it?
Yeah, so with Power BI, if you've never used Power BI allows you to come in and do what we call vendor compare, right? So you can take and compare two vendors. And on the right side of the Power BI window has a bunch of different filters. So you can select two vendors. Let's say you want to compare two appraisers or two AMCs, and you want to look at 1004s in, I don't know, ABC County, New York, and you want to see what the turn time is. You can instantly run that report and you can see what the volume is, what the turn time is, and you can compare two vendors. What Power BI and Appraisal Works also does is when you originally go into the platform, we provide two sets of numbers, two baselines. So there is how you're performing. There's 4 metrics, and how the user, the person logging in, how that client is performing on those 4 metrics. Below that, or I'm sorry, above that is how all of the other users, all of the other lenders, credit unions, non-banks that are using Appraisal Works, how they're performing, and that is anonymized. So from a, let's say, turn time, it'll just show turn time for whatever filter you put in, and it will say, okay, everybody else is getting a 7.5 business day turn time in whatever state you pick. You are doing this in 8 days or 6 days. So you can compare yourself on different metrics based on the filters you provide and the anonymized data. And what was the second part of that, Josh?
Here. You mentioned a QC function. For example, can it interpret PCR's responses and systematically let you know that it's acceptable?
So from a QC function, the QC function has a couple of different QC tools available, but the PCRs most likely are not going to come with the XML you need, and it's not going to be able to look at the photos and analyze photos. So from a PCR perspective, you're still going to want to have somebody look at those photos. From an appraisal perspective, there are a number of different QC tools where you can run automated rules at vendor upload and block those appraisals that come through or that fail critical rules. So you can create some efficiencies there. We also have a couple of other third-party tools that are available. One's through Veros, one's through Clear Capital. Those are third-party tools that you can use. You can also, again, this is more so on the mortgage side, but it will also take a look at the score from UCDP, and based on that score, you can direct that appraisal into certain queues. But from a PCR perspective, there really isn't any automated tool because of the lack of XML for those PCRs.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank. I do have one more for you since we have the time. Do you have direct integration with ICE or Encompass 360?
Yes. We have direct integration to both. The Encompass integration is their Partner Connect. I'm sure you're familiar with that. That's their latest version. It's a really robust interface. And those are really easy to do because to make the connection, we just need the Encompass ID. And that connection really into Appraisal Works can be done in a matter of minutes. And then we always run some testing. We can also show you through a Teams meeting what it's going to look like from your view through Encompass. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. I'd be happy to show you how that looks.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. Well, it looks like that is all the question and answers there. So we are good on that space.
Well, I appreciate it. Isabella, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any closing remarks for the group.
Yes, thank you so much, Frank and Josh, for joining us today. And with that, we will conclude today's program. The session has been recorded and will be available within 3 to 5 business days. On behalf of the Consumer Bankers Association, thank you to everyone who joined us. And of course, have a great afternoon. You may now disconnect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.